Welcome to this deep dive. We're really going deep into the world of millers. You all wanted to know more about this profession, and honestly, I was pretty curious myself.
Yeah, it's amazing how important milling has always been, right?
Totally. Although I have to admit, I always pictured those old school windmills.
Oh, for sure.
But looking at these sources, it's so much more than that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've come a long way from windmills. Those are still out there, though.
Right.
But now it's high tech, like inside a modern mill, massive machines grinding everything up. It's a whole process.
Okay, so less about quaint windmills and more like a modern factory? What's the environment actually like for a miller?
Yeah, think of it like a factory. It's bustling, a little loud with all the equipment going.
So earplugs are probably a must-have. What does a normal day even look like for a miller? Can you walk us through it?
Well, you might start your day by checking those huge grain silos, making sure the moisture is just right. That's super important.
Right.
Oh yeah, even a little change in humidity can really mess with the grind.
Huh, who knew? So much for just pouring grain in a hopper. It's way more technical than people
You
realize.
got it. It's
Um,
not just grinding, you're always adjusting, making sure the flour quality is perfect every step of the way.
okay, that makes sense. So you're checking the mills, making those adjustments. What comes next?
Next up is where the real skill comes in. Think about it, all those different flours, cake flour, bread flour, all purpose. They're all different.
Right.
They have their own textures, their own uses.
And that's where the adjusting the grind really matters.
Exactly. Getting it just right
Yeah.
is everything. You wouldn't believe how fine cake flour has to be compared to, say, bread flour. It's all about the gluten.
So a miller needs to be a bit of a scientist, I
For
guess.
sure, for sure. It's this cool mix of, like, old school knowledge and modern science. They have to make sure the flour meets all these specific standards for bakers and just, regular people like us.
Yeah. Speaking of modern, I was blown away by the tech involved, even just in the job application process. Like RoleCatcher uses this AI that looks at your resume, helps tailor it to jobs. It's wild.
It's crazy how tech is changing everything these days, even something as old as milling.
Right.
But you still got to have those human skills. Problem solving, critical thinking, that eye for detail, those are always going to be essential.
So you can be a pro at grinding wheat, but got to be tech savvy too. But going back to those skills, what kind of person really thrives in this career?
Someone who likes to work with their hands, takes pride in making something important, maybe even has that kind of, I don't know, a little bit of a scientific mind. And if you're prepping for an interview, RoleCatcher even has this cool AI tool that lets you practice answering questions, get feedback.
It really is amazing how tech is changing even these age-old jobs. But I am curious about the career path itself. Can you actually work your way up, start at like an entry-level position?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not uncommon to begin as an apprentice, kind of learn from the more experienced millers,
Oh, I see.
and then over time, you gain more responsibility.
So you could move up to like a supervisor or even manage a whole team.
Yeah, exactly. As you get more experience under your belt, you might even specialize.
Specialize, how so?
Well, you could focus on a specific type of milling or a certain part of the whole process.
Oh, that's cool. So it's kind of like leveling up in a video game, but with flower power, right?
Yeah, I like that.
But okay, let's be real for a second, because Rollcatcher also mentioned some of the challenges.
Mm.
What about the not so glamorous parts of being a miller?
Well, it's definitely not always like clean and quiet.
Right, all that flour.
Yeah, all that flour, it gets everywhere.
Probably not great for someone with a dust allergy then.
Definitely not.
Mm.
And it can get loud around those big mills, so ear protection is key. And it's physical, too.
Oh, right.
You're on your feet, often for long hours.
So you got to be okay with a little noise, a little dust, maybe like a good workout now and then.
Exactly. It takes mental and physical stamina, for sure.
That makes me think of something else Rollcatcher mentioned, infestations. They said that millers sometimes deal with that. I never would have thought of that.
It's true. I mean, grain, it's food, right? So
Yeah.
naturally, it can attract some unwanted guests.
Like what? Insects?
Yeah,
Rodents?
exactly.
Wow. So it's not all just about machinery and grind sizes. You got to protect the grain from invaders too.
Yeah, it's a behind-the-scenes thing. Most people probably don't even consider it.
Right. Definitely not glamorous.
Yeah,
But I guess it shows how important a miller is making sure our food is safe.
absolutely. It's a
What?
huge responsibility, but it's also rewarding, right? To know you're making a difference.
Totally. So speaking of rewarding, what would you say are some of the most fulfilling parts of being a miller?
I think there's a certain, I don't know, satisfaction
Yeah.
in carrying on a tradition that's been around, well, forever,
Right,
basically.
it's an age-old profession.
And you're creating something tangible,
Hmm,
something people need every single day.
that's a good point. Flour, it's in so many things we eat.
Exactly. And if you enjoy working with your hands, solving problems, there are always new challenges in milling. You're always learning.
It's a really unique mix. It's science, it's craft, it's even history all rolled into one. But let's get back to those interview questions. RoleCatcher gave some examples, and some of them they'd really make you sweat a little.
Oh, yeah, those curveball questions. They're meant to see how you think on your feet, how well you really know your stuff.
Like that one about the grain moisture being too high. What do you do? That one really got me.
It's a great example, right? Because it shows that being a miller, it's more than just what's in a textbook.
Yeah.
You got to know how to handle those real-life problems, make those split-second decisions.
So if you're ever in that interview, they throw you a curveball, don't panic. Just take a breath, think it through, you guide this.
Exactly. Show them you're a problem solver, that you're passionate about this work.
Thinking about those interview questions, it makes me wonder what surprised you the most learning all this about millers?
Honestly,
Hmm.
I think it's how much they actually need to know. I mean, it's a lot. History, science, mechanics, even just like intuition.
It really is this unique combination. They have to be a jack of all trades, huh?
Totally. And to think they're the ones behind the scenes of, well, so much of what we love. Bread, pasta, pastries. All of this starts with a miller.
That's so true. I think it's easy to forget that how crucial millers are to our entire food system.
Right. Absolutely. And like we were talking about before, it's not getting any simpler for them either. With all the tech, new demands from people, it's a lot.
Which makes me think, what about the future of milling? We talked about technology changing things, but what does that actually mean for someone working as a miller years down the line? Got any
Well,
guesses?
that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to say for sure, but automation, that's only going to become more common.
So more robots in the mill, does that mean fewer jobs for humans?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. And not just for milling either, right? A lot of industries are dealing with that. But I don't see human millers becoming obsolete anytime soon.
Really? Why not?
Because, think about it, you still need a person's ingenuity, that ability to solve problems on the fly, a real deep understanding of the craft. AI can't replicate that, not yet at least.
That is reassuring, I have to say. So maybe it's not about humans versus robots, but more like working together.
Exactly. Using technology to help millers to do even better work, not replace them entirely.
So the future of milling, less about physical strength and more about what? Brain power.
Exactly. The miller of the future, they're not just operating machinery, they're overseeing these complex systems, analyzing data, making sure everything runs perfectly.
A high-tech version of this age-old job. Pretty cool, if you ask me.
It really is. That's what makes it so interesting, I think. So much tradition, but always changing and adapting.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a whole new appreciation for the world of millers. It's a lot more than just flour, that's for sure. It's science, it's technology, it's a real passion for, keeping this vital tradition alive.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And for anyone listening who might be thinking about a career in milling, just remember, it's a field that never sits still. Full of challenges, sure, but incredibly rewarding too.
Who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to come up with the next big thing in milling.
Now that is something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those mills turning.